They thought they were untouchable, that their schemes, their deception, their attempts to tear you down would never come back to haunt them. They walked through life throwing stones in your path, convinced you would stumble, convinced they had the upper hand. But fate has a way of teaching its lessons in ways no one can escape. The universe does not forget. The hands that once tried to push you into the shadows are now clawing desperately for light, because the same darkness they wished upon you has become their own prison. Critics, doubters, those who laughed at your struggles, they were so certain you would break. But here's the irony. Their efforts to sabotage you only fueled your transformation. Like pressure creating diamonds, every obstacle they placed in your way was sharpening your edge, forging you into something unshakable. They thought they were setting traps for you, but they were just digging their own graves. Now, they sit in the mess they created, watching you rise while they sink under the weight of their own bitterness. And it burns them, because you weren't just anyone, you were chosen, and that fact alone haunts them. There is a power in being the one who survives, the one who thrives despite the odds, the one whose very existence disrupts those who wanted to see failure. They may try to act unbothered, but every success of yours is a dagger to their ego. Every step you take forward is a reminder of their own downfall. They wanted you broken, but you became untouchable. And now, they are the ones drowning in regret, suffocating in the void of their own making. If you feel this power in your soul, if you know deep down that you are meant for something greater, then join this journey. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stand in your power. The universe has already decided. You were never meant to lose. Number 1. Never ignore the echo, because it will haunt you forever. They thought they were untouchable, that the universe would turn a blind eye to their actions, that their words, sharp as daggers, reckless as wildfire, would never circle back to them. They lived as if cause and effect were myths, as if the balance of life was just a superstition. But the truth is, you can't escape your own echoes. Every choice, every betrayal, every moment they dismissed you, it all carved its mark into time. And now that mark is reflecting right back at them, louder than they ever imagined. They once laughed at your pain, convinced themselves that their words were harmless, their indifference justified. They thought pushing you away was their victory, but the silence that follows a storm isn't peace, it's devastation. And now, in the quiet of their own existence, they hear it. The hollow void where your voice used to be, the weight of what they lost pressing down on them like an unbearable burden. They thought your presence was just another chapter, one they could easily turn the page on. But they never realized you weren't just a page. You were the whole foundation. You held things together in ways they never acknowledged. You brought stability, energy, and an irreplaceable force that made their life function smoother than they even recognized. And now that you're gone, the cracks are visible, the walls are caving in, and reality is hitting harder than they ever prepared for. This isn't just about regret. This is about awakening, the kind that shatters illusions and forces people to confront the truth they spent so long running from. They tried to convince themselves they didn't need you, but every attempt at moving forward without you feels forced. The messages they took for granted, gone. The unwavering support they barely acknowledged, now a distant memory. The warmth they never had to ask for, it left with you. They told themselves it wouldn't matter, that they'd be fine. But life doesn't let people get away so easily. And now they're experiencing the slow unraveling of everything they thought they had under control. Because what they overlooked, what they dismissed, was actually the very thing holding them together. They can distract themselves, fake a smile, pretend they don't feel the weight. But when the world quiets down, when they're left alone with their own thoughts, there's no escaping it. They lost someone who mattered, someone irreplaceable, and no matter how much they try to convince themselves otherwise, deep down, they know this is the price of their choices. They thought they were winning when they let you go, but what they never saw coming was this, the echo of their own actions, chasing them down, forcing them to live in the reality they created. Because in the end, you weren't the one left struggling. They were. Number 2. Stop assuming people are permanent or watch them disappear. They thought you were a constant, like the air they breathe, like the ground beneath their feet, something so familiar, so dependable, that it never even crossed their mind that you could vanish. They mistook your presence for permanence, your patience for an unbreakable contract, your forgiveness for a never-ending supply. But people are not statues. They are not bound to stay in the same place forever. And when they are pushed too far, when their worth is ignored for too long, they do what the underestimated always do. They leave. They built their world on the assumption that you would always be there, always available, always ready to fix the mess they created. They believed they could drain you dry and still find you standing, waiting, willing to give again. But life has a way of pulling the rug from beneath the arrogant. And now they are standing in the void that your presence once filled, trying to pretend they are unaffected, trying to convince themselves they never needed you. But the truth is creeping in, and no amount of distractions can silence it. They didn't just lose a person, they lost their foundation. The quiet support, the unspoken understanding, the way you filled in the gaps without them even having to ask. They took it all for granted, never stopping to realize how much of their stability depended on you. And now they feel the weight of their own neglect. They assumed they were strong on their own, that they didn't need you. But strength isn't about never needing anyone. It's about knowing what to value before it's too late. Regret doesn't hit like a storm. It seeps in like water through cracks. It shows up in the empty inbox, in the quiet where laughter used to be, in the moments they reach for something familiar only to find it gone. They thought your loyalty was an obligation, something they could demand without reciprocation. But you weren't bound to them. You were a privilege, not a possession. And now that privilege has been revoked. They might put on a front, pretend that losing you didn't shake them to their core. But deep down, in those moments of silence, in those nights that feel a little colder than they used to, they know the truth. They had something rare, something real, and they let it slip through their fingers. They assumed you were a constant, but you were a choice. And once you decided to walk away, there was no coming back. Now, they live in the reality they never prepared for, the one where you are no longer a part of their world. And no matter how much they try to rewrite the past, no matter how much they wish they had done things differently, there is one truth they cannot escape. They did this to themselves. Number 3. Apologies don't erase damage. Act right before it's too late. They thought time was on their side, that they could mistreat, manipulate, dismiss you like you were an option, and then, when it suited them, turn around and smooth it over with a few empty words. They believed an apology was a reset button, a magic eraser that could wipe away the damage they inflicted. But life doesn't work like that. Apologies don't rewind time. They don't undo betrayal. They don't resurrect what they killed. And now, too late, They're starting to understand that some mistakes don't come with second chances. Regret is a slow, creeping poison. It doesn't announce itself with a bang. It doesn't show up the moment they walk away. No, it waits. It lingers in the shadows, letting them believe they escaped consequence. It lets them move on with their ego intact, convinced they got away with everything they did to you. But then one day, a memory strikes, a flash of something familiar, a ghost of what used to be, and suddenly it's all consuming. The weight of their choices, the reality of their loss, the bitter truth that you are never coming back. They had every chance. You gave them patience they never earned, understanding they never deserved, loyalty they mistook for weakness. And they wasted it. Every single time, they pushed you further, convinced you would never reach your limit. But chosen ones don't beg. Chosen ones don't stick around where they aren't valued. You weren't just another person in their life. You were the best thing that ever happened to them. And now, their greatest punishment is knowing that they can never undo what they did. They thought they had time. They thought you would always be waiting, always willing to forgive, always one more chance away from coming back. But the universe doesn't operate on their arrogance. They crossed a line, and once a chosen one walks away, there is no return. Now, they live with the weight of their own destruction, suffocating under the reality that their biggest mistake wasn't just losing you, it was believing they could mistreat you and still keep you. Let them sit in that regret. Let it haunt them, because for them, there is no do-over, no redemption, no turning back time. The only thing left for them now, an endless cycle of what-ifs and if-onlys, while you rise untouchable. Number 4. Losing someone isn't just losing them, it's losing yourself too. They thought losing you was just about losing a person, just another name to cross off their list, another chapter they could close without consequence. But what they failed to see, what their arrogance blinded them from, is that you weren't just another presence in their life. You were the force holding together the version of themselves they actually liked. And now, without you, that version is gone. At first, they shrugged it off, convinced they could move forward untouched. They told themselves they were fine, that life would go on as usual. But the universe has a cruel way of revealing truth. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in, slowly and mercilessly. A shift they couldn't name, an emptiness they couldn't ignore. And then, the realization struck like a hammer. They weren't just missing you, they were missing themselves. See, you weren't just someone in their life. You were a mirror that reflected back the best parts of them. You were the one who saw their potential, who believed in them when they doubted themselves. You breathed life into their dreams, gave them confidence they never had alone. But they were too blinded by their own entitlement to recognize it. They assumed they were always that person, that they would remain strong, motivated and whole, with or without you. But now they see the cracks. Now, when they look in the mirror, they don't see the same person they were when you were around. They see someone diminished, someone uncertain, someone empty. The fire you once fueled in them is nothing but dying embers. The stability they once took for granted? Gone. They no longer move through life with the same ease, because the version of them that thrived, that was growing, that had direction, left with you. And here's the cruel irony. They did this to themselves. They thought losing you was just about adjusting to your absence, but what they really lost was a part of themselves they may never get back. And no matter how much they try to fill the void, no matter how many distractions they chase, they can't escape this one brutal truth. The best version of them only existed because you were in their life. And now, that version is nothing more than a memory. Number 5. Don't test the limits. Some lines can't be uncrossed. They never believed in limits. They thought they could take and take without consequence, that your patience was an infinite well they could drain dry. They tested you, not once, not twice, but relentlessly, pushing further each time, convinced you would never walk away. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your forgiveness for submission, and because they saw no repercussions, they grew bolder, reckless, intoxicated by the illusion that you would always be there, no matter how far they pushed. But fate has a way of humbling those who refuse to see the warning signs. They ignored the hesitation in your voice, brushed off the exhaustion in your eyes, laughed at the moments when you began to pull away. They thought you were just going through a phase, that no matter how much they took, you would always return. But they were wrong. Because the moment you reached your breaking point, you didn't announce it. You didn't give them a final chance. You didn't beg them to do better. You just stopped. And that silence, it speaks louder than any explosion ever could. Now they sit in the aftermath, choking on the emptiness they once believed would never come. They look around and realize the void isn't just a missing piece. It's a reminder of everything they destroyed. They used to think they were untouchable, that they could bend the rules without consequence. But now they are face to face with a truth they never prepared for. Some lines, once crossed, are permanent. They thought they were in control. They thought they set the pace. But they never understood what it truly meant to lose someone irreplaceable. Now they are left with nothing but regret, haunted by the realization that you weren't something they could replace, fix, or win back. This isn't just a setback for them, it's their downfall, and the worst part, they did it to themselves. Number 6. Playing games with people's hearts. Get ready to lose everything. They played the game, thinking they were untouchable. Every move they made, every twisted word, every carefully crafted illusion was all part of their grand strategy. They saw themselves as the puppet masters, pulling the strings, setting the rules, deciding how everything would unfold. They pushed limits, toyed with emotions, tested the depths of your patience, believing that no matter what, you would always be there, always willing to fight for them, to prove your worth, to endure. But here's what they never understood. A chosen one does not beg to be valued. A chosen one does not play by rules designed to keep them trapped. They thought they were winning. They thought they held all the power. But the thing about games is that they only work when the other player stays in them. And the moment you walked away, their entire illusion collapsed. Now they stand alone in the wreckage of their own manipulation, confused, desperate, realizing, too late, that they were never in control. They miscalculated. They assumed you would always be available, always chasing, always proving yourself. But a chosen one is not someone to be played with. You saw the cycle for what it was, and instead of giving them another chance, you gave them the one thing they never expected, your absence. And now they are drowning in the silence they once dismissed. The validation they took for granted is gone. The energy they drained from you has dried up. The attention they once controlled has shifted, away from them, toward the life you were always meant to have. And that realization is hitting harder than any punishment they could have imagined. They spent so much time perfecting their tricks, their tactics, their ability to manipulate, that they never learned how to genuinely connect. They never considered that you, the real prize, could simply walk away. And now they sit with the truth that haunts them. They didn't just lose you. They lost the only game they thought they had mastered. And this time, there is no rematch. Number 7. Laughing at someone's exit? The silence will drown you later. They laughed, they smirked. They convinced themselves that your departure was nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a temporary shift they wouldn't even feel. Maybe they even mocked you, scoffed at the idea that losing you would make any difference. In their arrogance, they believed they were untouchable, that their world would go on exactly the same, uninterrupted. But life has a cruel way of setting the record straight. Time is the great revealer, and now the silence they once welcomed has become unbearable. The space you left behind isn't just empty. It's a gaping void, impossible to ignore. The comfort they dismissed, the energy they took for granted, the way you effortlessly made life smoother, lighter, easier, all gone. They once mistook their own convenience for strength, assuming that you needed them more than they needed you. But now, the weight of reality is pressing down, and the laughter? It's long gone. They tried to replace you, tried to fill the gap with distractions, with temporary fixes, with people who could never bring what you did. But nothing fits. No new conversation carries the depth of yours. No new presence brings the same stability. The ease with which they assumed they could move on has turned into frustration, regret, and an aching realization. They miscalculated. They believed they could treat you like an option, only to find out you were the foundation. And now they sit in the wreckage of their own making. The same person they thought was disposable is the one whose absence haunts them the most. Every success you achieve without them, every moment they see you thriving, it stings. Because they weren't just wrong about you, they were wrong about themselves. They thought they had the upper hand, but in reality, they were playing a game they didn't even understand. The worst part? There's no undoing it, no reset button, no way to erase the choices that led them here. They assumed they had control over the story, but the final twist? They weren't the ones writing it. And now, as they sit in the silence they once laughed about, the only thing left ringing in their ears is the echo of their own foolishness. The joke is on them. Number 8. When you lose someone, you don't just lose them, you lose an entire life. They thought they were just losing you, a person, a presence, a passing connection. They convinced themselves they could move forward untouched, that your absence would be nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a temporary shift. But life doesn't work that way. When you walk away, you don't just leave behind an empty space. You take an entire reality with you. The version of life they once knew, the comfort they took for granted, the effortless warmth of your presence. It's all gone. And now they are stuck in a world that feels colder, emptier, and unforgiving. At first, they shrugged it off. They told themselves they'd be fine. After all, how much could one person really matter? But reality has a cruel way of proving its point. It's not just you they miss. It's the way everything felt when you were around, the way conversations flowed with ease, the way life's burdens felt lighter with you by their side, the way they could turn to you for understanding without even having to ask. They never noticed it before, but they notice it now, because now it's missing. The victories feel hollow, the laughter doesn't reach as deep, and the tough days feel heavier than ever. They used to have you as a constant, a foundation, a safe place. And now they are lost in a version of life they never prepared for, the one without you in it. They never considered that when you leave, you take more than just your presence. You take the version of them that only existed when you were there. They thought they could replace what was lost, fill the void with distractions, surround themselves with people who would never measure up. But some losses can't be covered up. Some absences can't be ignored. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the world that existed because of you. And no matter how hard they try, they can't get it back. The door they assumed would always be open, it's closed, locked, sealed forever. And now, all they have left is the regret of ever believing that life without you would feel the same. Number 9. No distraction can fill the void. Respect people before they're gone. They thought they could replace you, that the void you left behind was just an empty space they could casually fill with someone new, with distractions, with noise. They believed they could drown out the absence of your presence with shallow conversations, forced laughter, and mindless indulgence. But here's the truth they never considered. Some voids aren't just empty, they are reminders. And no matter how much they try to cover it up, that hollow space is screaming at them, whispering the truth they don't want to face. Nothing fits. At first, they thought they were fine. They surrounded themselves with people who didn't challenge them, with relationships that required no depth, no effort, no real emotional investment. They convinced themselves they were moving forward, that life could continue as if you were never there. But the illusion is wearing thin, because no matter how much they try to fill the gap, there's one thing they can't run from. You weren't just anyone. You were the foundation they never appreciated, the energy that made things make sense. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the connection, the understanding, the presence that made life richer. Now, everything feels dull. Every conversation feels rehearsed. Every new interaction lacks the depth they once took for granted. They thought they were in control, that they could switch you out like a piece on a chessboard, but now they see the truth. What they lost wasn't replaceable. It was once in a lifetime. They try to laugh louder, stay busier, force themselves into distractions, but distractions have an expiration date. The nights get quieter, the noise fades, and suddenly there's nothing left but the weight of reality pressing down on them. The truth that what they lost was real, and it's never coming back. They thought the void would shrink with time, but instead it's growing, because they are finally starting to understand. Some spaces aren't meant to be filled with just anything. Some spaces belong to people who actually mattered, and they let the most valuable presence in their life slip through their fingers. Now, no matter what they do, they are stuck with the one thing they never expected, the undeniable, haunting truth that they will never find another you. Number 10. Thriving in chaos. Be careful, it might turn against you. They thought chaos was their kingdom, their weapon, their advantage. They thrived in disorder, twisting reality to fit their narrative, manipulating emotions like puppeteers, and creating just enough instability to always keep control. They lived in the storm, believing it made them untouchable, because as long as things were chaotic, they could always shift blame, always find a way to twist the story in their favor. But here's what they never saw coming. The moment the storm turns on its creator. They used chaos against you, hoping to break you, to keep you running in circles, doubting yourself, fighting battles you never started. They mistook your patience for submission, your endurance for compliance. But they underestimated one thing. You were never part of their storm. You were the calm in it. You were the one absorbing the impact, holding things together while they played their reckless games. And the second you walked away, the chaos they controlled for so long became their own undoing. Now they are trapped in the very turmoil they once unleashed on you. The same instability they used as a weapon has turned into their prison, and there's no escape. There's no one left to fix things, no one to absorb the blows, no one to stabilize the world they set on fire. The game is over, and the only person left to suffer is them. They thought they could play with fire and never get burned, but chaos is not loyal. It does not serve its master forever. And now, without you there to hold things together, the destruction they created is devouring them whole. The silence is deafening. The loneliness is suffocating. The reality is unbearable. They once believed they were in control of the storm. Now they are drowning in it. And the worst part, no one is coming to save them. Number 11. Mistaking patience for weakness. That's how you lose the strongest ones. They thought they had you figured out. They mistook your patience for submission, your kindness for weakness, your loyalty for desperation. Every time you forgave, they convinced themselves it was because you had no choice. Every time you stayed, they assumed it was because you needed them more than they needed you. They thought they held the power, that they could push, manipulate, and take without consequence. But now they see the truth. It was never weakness. It was strength. It took strength to hold space for them, to stand firm in your own integrity while they tested every limit. It took strength to see their flaws and still offer understanding. It took unshakable power to keep showing up, to try, to believe in the possibility that they could be better. But what they never realized, what they never saw coming, was that this same strength would be the thing to destroy them. Because real strength isn't in how much you can endure, it's in knowing when to stop enduring. And you stopped. The moment you walked away, the moment you withdrew the energy they so carelessly exploited, they felt it. The silence they once mocked now suffocates them. The absence they thought they could replace now haunts them. They called you weak because they had never seen real power. They thought control meant breaking someone down. But now they're sitting in the wreckage, realizing that the real control was always yours. Because you chose to stay, and more importantly, you chose to leave. And now they see what true power looks like. Not in manipulation, not in cruelty, not in taking, but in walking away without looking back. They assumed they could find patience like yours elsewhere. They thought someone else would tolerate their games, their selfishness, their recklessness. But they were wrong, because it wasn't patience they lost. It was you. And now they will spend a lifetime searching for something they will never find again. The strong one. It was never them. It was you. And they see it now. Number 12. Thinking someone needed you, the truth will crush you. They had it twisted from the very beginning. They walked around with this inflated sense of self, convinced that they were the prize, that you were the one chasing, that your patience and loyalty were proof of your dependency on them. In their mind, they were the ones calling the shots, deciding when to engage, when to withdraw, when to acknowledge your worth, like they had time on their side. But time has a way of exposing the truth, and now the illusion they lived in has shattered. Because it was never you who needed them, it was always them who needed you. They just didn't see it, until now. They thought they were strong, independent, untouchable, but strength isn't measured in how many people orbit around you. It's measured in how well you stand when those people are gone. And right now, they're crumbling. The same presence they once overlooked was the very thing keeping their world stable. The one person they assumed would always be there, always available, always willing to carry the weight, is gone. And now, reality is brutal. The silence is louder than they ever imagined. The spaces you once filled feel emptier, colder, heavier. They look around and realize that the people they surrounded themselves with were never like you. No one else brings the same depth, the same warmth, the same quiet reassurance that you did. And the most painful part? They can't fix it. There's no rewind button, no magic words to undo what's been done. They spent so much time convincing themselves they were in control, but now they're the ones spiraling. They used to believe they were your anchor, the one keeping you grounded. But the truth, you were their anchor all along. You were the one who gave them balance, who made them feel seen, who softened the impact of their bad choices. And now that you've walked away, they're drifting, lost, unstable, desperate for something they'll never have again. This is what happens when you mistake patience for weakness, loyalty for desperation. This is what happens when you take the rarest thing you've ever had for granted. They thought they had time. They thought they could always come back. But now, they have nothing left but regret. Number 13. Don't laugh at karma. It always arrives on time. They thought they were above it all, that the rules didn't apply to them, that they could twist the truth, manipulate people, and walk away without ever looking back. They convinced themselves that life would always bend in their favor, that consequences were for the weak, and that karma was nothing more than a fairy tale told to keep people in check. But the universe has a way of balancing the scales, and now karma has their name written all over it. At first, they shrugged off the signs. A small setback here, a minor inconvenience there. They thought it was just bad luck, just a rough patch. But karma doesn't strike all at once. It moves like a shadow, creeping in slowly, patiently, tightening its grip. And before they even realized what was happening, the very games they played on others were being played on them. The betrayals they brushed off as nothing. Now they're on the receiving end, and suddenly it cuts deep. The lies they once told so easily. Now they don't know who to trust. The control they once held over people, gone, and they are powerless in a situation they once thought they ruled. They feel it now, the sting of uncertainty, the bitterness of regret, the suffocating weight of knowing that the very pain they inflicted on others is now their reality. They laughed at the idea of justice catching up to them, mocked the thought of karma as if it was a myth. But now they aren't laughing, because there's no escaping what's coming for them. This is what happens when you take and take without giving back. When you destroy people and expect life to still reward you. The arrogance they carried, the entitlement they wore so proudly, it has turned against them. And the worst part? There's no way out. No apology can undo the damage. No excuse can erase the past. Karma doesn't need permission. It doesn't ask if they're ready. It simply arrives, right on time. And now, with their own choices staring them in the face, they are finally learning the truth. Karma isn't just real, it's personal, and this time it came for them. Number 14. Control is an illusion. Lose someone real and watch yourself fall apart. They wanted to own your emotions, control your thoughts, dictate how you felt, how you reacted, how you moved through life. They thrived on the idea that they could pull the strings, make you doubt yourself, keep you running in circles just to earn their approval. And for a while, maybe they did. Maybe they had you questioning your worth, chasing after something that was never real, proving yourself to someone who was never satisfied. But then, something happened. You did the one thing they never saw coming. You let go. And in that moment, everything they thought they had over you disappeared. Because power only exists when it is given. It only works when the other person still cares, still engages, still plays the game. But you walked away from the game entirely. You stopped giving them a reaction. You stopped making excuses for them. You stopped carrying the weight of their insecurities. And without you to absorb the damage, they were left with something far worse than losing you. They were left with themselves. Controlling you was easy. It was a distraction, a way to avoid facing their own emptiness, their own flaws, their own self-inflicted misery. But now, with no one left to manipulate, no one left to project their guilt onto, they are stuck in the one battle they were never prepared to fight, the battle against their own reflection. They told themselves they were in control, but control was never theirs to keep. They believed they could push limits, play games, and take without consequence. But the universe doesn't work that way. Life always balances itself out. And now, they are the ones struggling to find footing in the absence of what they once dismissed. Because they didn't just lose you, they lost the comfort of your presence, the stability you provided, the version of life that felt whole because you were in it. They thought moving on would be easy, but the truth is suffocating them. No distraction can fill the void. No replacement can bring back what's gone. They can blame the circumstances, deny their regrets, pretend they don't feel the weight of their choices, but deep down, they know. This isn't about losing someone. This is about facing themselves for the first time without the safety net of your patience, your kindness, your love. And that's a reality far more painful than they ever anticipated. And now the cycle is complete. They set the stage for their own downfall, believing they could manipulate, control, and take without limits. But life doesn't let debts go unpaid. Now they are trapped in the emptiness they created, haunted by the weight of their own choices, while you are free, rising, untouchable. If this hit home, if you know they're feeling the consequences right now, like this video and subscribe for more powerful content. Drop a comment. What was your biggest lesson when you walked away? And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay strong. Stay in your power.